Alright, hello everyone. So here is the next Ahsoka headpiece that I made. Here it is. So this was for my Ahsoka Untold cosplay that I wore to Star Wars Celebration 2019 in Chicago. If you see my last video, I did mention that I was going to wear that silicone one, but it ripped Thursday night before the convention, and then I ran out to Joann's and panic bought a whole bunch of things, and that resulted in this headpiece. This headpiece was made in a day and a half, and I do not recommend doing it, ever. So this headpiece was made in the same way as my first one. So as you can see, it has the upholstery foam inside, and then it is covered in spandex. It has a layer of latex, and then it is painted with acrylic paint. Alright, so let's talk a little bit more about that whole panic made in a day and a half situation. Luckily, I had the patterns from my first headpiece with me. I was at school, so I was limited on what I had available to me, but luckily I had taken my patterns with me to school, so I did have a pattern for this. So I made some modifications. I slimmed out these front leku and made them a bit longer, made the back a bit longer. I made these a little bit more pointed, and then sewed it all together. So the foam, this upholstery foam on the inside is sewn together with an invisible stitch, also known as a Henson stitch or a puppet stitch, and so is some of the spandex. Some of the spandex is sewn with that same stitch, and then some of it is machine sewn, actually. So it's probably about half and half hand sewn, machine sewn. The reason I did some machine sewing is because I was running out of time. So the way I did the machine sewing is I draped the spandex on here and then put pins in it and trimmed that seam allowance as close to the pins as I could, and then carefully pulled it off, and then ran it through the machine with a small zigzag stitch, and then stitched, and then I trimmed the seam allowance and flipped it inside out. This one is on the wrong side, and that was because I did not want to try fighting it to flip it inside out and then get it to look nice and neat like these ones. But this headpiece does actually have that back headband right here, because this is the book version. It is very similar to the headband she actually wears in season 7 when she's in her jumpsuit outfit. It's just a little bit of a different color. So this seam is covered, so I wasn't worried about it or anything. And then it is painted with just plain acrylic paints from Hobby Lobby, just white and blue. There's nothing special about this blue. My other Ahsoka headpieces, the blue is mixed with some gray or black or white. One of them is mixed with a little bit of teal. So this paint job was not the paint job that I did that weekend. This has since been repainted because that paint job was so rushed and it was actually still wet when we had to leave for the convention on Saturday. But I did it, I wore it, and I don't regret it. So as you can see, it is painted with a layer of latex right there. The reason this paint is gone is because the headband was hot glued on, and I've obviously ripped the headband off and the hot glue pulled it off. It's not like my first one where the paint chipped off. This paint's actually on there pretty solidly. It's not going anywhere anytime soon. It's just like that because I ripped hot glue off. But yeah, this inside is just hot glued to the fabric to kind of clean up this edge. And that's really it. The back of this does actually have a piece of wire in it to shape it, to give it a little bit of a curve, because mine stuck straight out and I ran into so many things and hit so many things. So the back does have some stuffing in it and a piece of wire to hold that shape. The front leku are not stuffed. These just hold their shape by themselves. So let me put this on for you. Gotta take my clip out because this one is very tight. Okay, so as you can see, this one does sit farther back, so I do have to be very careful of how I hold my head and my shoulders to make sure that it doesn't slide back like that, because there is not a lot of space in the back. That's why in my season 3 through 5 headpiece there's that extra piece of foam in the top, and that's because I discovered with this one that there's not very much room back here for my head, so it does tend to slide back a little bit. Again, like that first one, it does just sit on my head like a hat. There's nothing holding it on, so I can easily just pop it on and off. It does limit my head movement. I do have to be very careful of how I move. It doesn't have very much flexibility to it. It does bend because it is just foam and paint, but that paint really limits its movement because paint does not flex like fabric and foam does. Alright, so some cons about this is, again, there's not very much space back here, so it doesn't sit on my head very well. It does tend to slide back on my head, and this tailpiece is it sits pretty far out from my back, so I do run into things sometimes. I wish that I could have taken more time because some of these seams are pretty gross. But some pros about this: I made it in a day and a half, and I was able to wear my Ahsoka cosplay to Star Wars Celebration 2019 in Chicago. I was so proud of myself and so happy. I am happy with how the second round of painting turned out, because I did repaint this so I could go do a photo shoot and take some pictures of it. It is super lightweight because, again, it is just foam, fabric, and paint. That's about it for this headpiece. Alright, so I'll see you guys next video.